Dean, you're talking about different countries, different cultures around the world, and now you're coaching. You're born and raised here, played here, coached here. And what have you learned from what you about the other countries that you might be able to apply here or are applying here?
I think one of the things that I've learned over the years is I really I step back and I reflected critically on my overall evolution, I guess, as a coach. And I started coaching when I was still a player in junior. And, I think I'm up to about, 37 years. So I'm just a baby by most of your standards. But you guys have been at it more than I have. But I've almost divided my timeline into 4 or 5 discrete chunks. And I think I really started to change in 2001. I know Tim and I were at U of C for a couple of years together, and then he went to Atlanta and I went to Tri-Cities. And my father got cancer that year and ended up passing away at Christmas. And I left my job to come back to spend the last month with him. And after that, I kind of went back into minor hockey a little bit, college, university, kind of bumped around, and then I had kids, so I was out of it for a few years. But as I look back in my timeline, Wally, I think it was in that time period where my dad's passing really deeply affected me, and it helped me become a little bit more introspective. So I would say, it's obviously a significant life event, but I think it was a good thing in some ways for me to kind of take stock of who I was and what I was trying to accomplish. And I've since that time, I can probably look at 2 distinct time periods in my coaching evolution. And I think I really started to embrace the games mindset. I'd flirted with it a little bit, and I'd talked about it with Tom when his ABC's hockey book came out, and in the first decade of 2000. And then after that, and during that too, I became more involved in using games to help teach concepts and move away from kind of the all the detail and the structure and the patterned drill types of practices. And I've really found the games approach to be great. And so as a coach developer, the last 10 years, moving back to coaching my son here in minor hockey, I've really appreciated the fact that games are a great basis to teach. And my coaching philosophy is fun, learn, and return. And when I use the games and activities, I just find it easier to achieve the implementation of that philosophy, because the players have fun. They learn by experimenting and failing and succeeding, and then they want to come back, and that's the return part. I think I've also learned it's a concept that I didn't know even had a name, but it's called appreciative inquiry. And as you said, when you work with other people who are maybe at a different level of experience as yourself, you can't just judge them and shake your head or say they're useless or ignore them. I think you've got to try to work with them to help develop capacity. And it's very challenging at times, but I think with appreciative inquiry, you pose a problem to the coaching staff, and then you work through it and you try to put yourself on more of an equal basis with them, even though you think you might know the answer or have ideas around the answer. But you let them work through some of the stuff themselves, and maybe you have to let them fail, but you're asking them questions along the way, and you're almost like a backseat driver a little bit and an influencer and trying to be subtle about it. And you take that approach and you try to help build their capacity. And of course, some people's capacity may be greater than others, but you do what you can. And I think that those are kind of some of the key aspects, if I had to put a name on them, would be the game approach and, trying to build capacity using appreciative inquiry.
Dean, when you talk about that yesterday, I worked with Tom and his U13 team. Just really as a spectator, but we do exchange a lot of ideas. And I worked with the other U13 coach and the staff, and he called me yesterday, uh, asking me to run an ice time for him. And I told him I really couldn't because I'm dealing with my health right now and hoping to be healthy for Christmas. And he is a deliberate, drill oriented guy, excellent. And Tom is literally the polar opposite. He teaches through games and he develops skills with game like activities, but the deliberate drills he does are are really good at the development, but he spends more time on game thinking and application of skills. And I've talked to him at length yesterday, the coach of the other team. If he's not going to be at practice, I made the suggestion because I've watched them play games and they're very talented, but they don't think when they play games. They're not thinking on their own. They're very skilled, and I just suggested they scrimmage and keep track of passes because Tom has somebody keeping pass completion stats, and that's sort of the focus for the team. And they do pass well because of that, given the way they play games where passing is involved. And it's really difficult because he's a great coach, lots of experience, and all coaches like ourselves here, we have our way of doing things that we're comfortable with. And I'm hoping to, like you say, influence him to experiment with something like that. And that is, that's the challenge. Because when you do things the same way and you're comfortable with it, now he does recognize he's not getting the results he would like to get. There's something there that he has to do differently. Um, it's just a matter of time before it comes about. But it's the same thing with you, your assistant coaches, and the art of coaching and your coaching team is as important as the team itself, because if you don't get along with each other and aren't compatible and communicating, um, you're sort of just bang your heads against the wall, and the kids will pick up on it too. So, does that make sense, Dean?
Oh, 100%. And it's a long process sometimes, Wally. The old saying, you lead a horse to water, can't make them drink. And, boy, I mean, some people will clue in and some just won't. And, in minor hockey, we're often, it's different in a lot of ways, at least here. Primarily it's all parents of kids who are playing on the team who volunteer for the role. And you apply to be a coach and you get selected. And as a head coach, they say, here's a list of names who applied and they're certified and can help you out. And there you go. You can decide to have all of them, one of them, two of them, whatever. So, it's not like an academy where maybe you're bringing an entire staff or they're hired people, or, college and university, you're usually bringing your own people with you. Pro national team, maybe you're getting guys assigned that go through an interview process. And ultimately, the coaching staff needs to try to find some common ground and establish some roles and figure out who's going to be looking at what. And that stuff, that's building culture within the team, and it takes some time. And you're not always successful with that.
Dean, you use the term clue in, and I think back to the first time I coached hockey. Double A hockey inherited a team that was the best in the city because the two Pee Wee teams in the level below had played in the city championship. So I got the graduating players and was in 4th place in November. I needed to get clued in. I didn't know what to do. I was going to quit. But I asked for help. And phys ed degree, playing with the national team, you think I'm a teacher, doing everything, great practices. Didn't work. Wasn't working. And they were trying to please me. And they weren't performing. And when I spoke to the coach of the team before, and he mentioned he just arranged games. He wanted them to 2 objectives: to work hard all the time. Effort was important, and the next thing was respect. And of course, he knew enough about hockey in terms of structure, but he didn't beat it to death like I was.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a turning point for me. And so that's the fine line between deliberate practice and is it effective? And to what degree do you do how much deliberate and how much game-like? And work in the word progressive there, because that's the art of going from point A to point B to point C. But the clue in thing is, here I am, phys ed degree, playing international hockey, a year of minor pro, and I was smart enough to ask somebody for help. And I tell this story every coaching clinic. And that's sort of the barrier to coaches in terms of understanding your stages of competence and appreciating we don't know what we don't know, and we can learn more from one another. And the art of mentorship is really, that's what we're talking about here. Because now none of us are really coaching. We're coaching coaches, even though you're coaching the team. So that clue-in aspect in terms of how you're able to come across to your coaches relative to, you could just bluntly say, well, you don't want to bruise egos, because they are volunteers and they mean well. They're there for the right reason.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a line of their own confidence and belief in themselves and their growth and their development. And I think there's an art to coaching coaches. And that openness to learning, which is really the essence of our group, the No Dead Sharks, continually learning and openness to learning.